Continuing our series of making displays right there, right? This one I want to show you right there, right, is we could classify as being a HUD or a display basically that you could use just to show information right there, right? It's the tiniest Borg series that we have. It actually consists of an OLED right there, right? That's a solid display right there, right? And then this tiniest of computers right there that I found right there, right? It's also an M5 stack product right there, right? I'll show you the page of where you get this, and also have a link of where this is right there, right? Okay. But I want to show you the display first right there. This is the tiniest thing that I have right there, right? Of course, it is monochrome right there, right? So you're not going to see you're not going to see right there basically the highest resolutions of things right there, right? Okay. And then I also have to get everything out of the way right there, right? So that you can see this without things getting in your way right there, right? Okay, so let me get this sort of lined up right there so you can see what this looks like. And so the first thing I'm going to show you right there, right, is now in these HUDs that I've been seeing right there, right? One of them is like called a holiday display right there, right? Or a holiday device right there, right? And I've seen others also, I think one called Edge right there, right? They're being sold right there for a lot of money right there, right? But I want to show you right there, this is actually very inexpensive right there, right? So the first thing I want to show you right here, right, is that it's actually displaying the IP address right there so that we can actually get things going. And so just like before right there, right, I'll start up. If you look at the previous displays right there, right? Same thing right there. We'll use a browser, right, to activate things. So let me actually start this up, and I'll start sharing the screen. And then let me start up a video right there, right? Now normally I show only my videos right there, right? But this one is actually often used right there, right? For demonstrations right there, right? So I said, well, this shouldn't actually be a copyright infringement. And hopefully you can see that this is actually a video. Now this is an OLED display right there, so it's not in color. It's just basically has two colors, black and white. And so if you watch this long enough right there, right, I'm not going to show you the whole thing right there, right. Hopefully you can see that this is actually a something called Bad Apple right there, right? Okay, that I've seen actually used to demonstrate OLED displays right there, right? Okay, and then we have that one, and then I'm going to switch over to another video. And again, these are not high resolution right there, right? So, but let me switch over to the other video right there, right? So hopefully, let me show you this right there, right? And now this is actually a video right there, right? Not so hopefully you can see some motion in there right there, right? Okay, but anyway, it would actually be best for demonstrating something like silhouette videos right there, right? Okay, so here I'm back at the Bad Apple video right there, right? Okay, so let me stop that there right there, right? And then let me start showing you what this device consists of. And so so let me start taking this thing apart right there, right? Okay, now I had this little rubber band over here, but when I use this right there, right, and I'm actually happy to report this one actually, even the lowest power setting right there of this right there, with a cap on, actually I can see this. The contrast between the OLED on and off right there, right, is really quite high. And let me see, I put in this little red tie right here, right there, rather than a rubber band normally, because basically it makes this faster to put on there, but also because the way my glasses, they tend to actually like cut rubber bands pretty quickly right there, right? So I've done that, taken that away right there, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the power right there, right? And then after that right there, right, then let me show you how I connected these things on here right there, right. And so, and I'll reconnect it right there, right, so you can see what it looks like without all of this right here, right. Okay, now the optics of the device right here, right. So this is I think an N6 NC6 right there. Let me look that up right there. Nano C6 right there. Computer right there, right, that you can get from MStack. And then over here right there, right, what I have right there is I just got a little piece of plastic right there that I found right there, right, to use as like a rubber band right there, right, to keep the whole thing together right there, right. Okay, here's the actual optics of the whole thing right there, and I'll take this apart so you can see how this works right here, right. And then again, I'm using magnets right there to keep everything together right there, right. Okay, so what I have here, right, is I have those little tiny magnets that I've been using right there, right. Okay, so let me remove these right there, right, and set these apart right there, right, so they don't snap together. And then over here right there, right, I have actually the OLED display. And now the OLED display actually does come with a it actually comes with a like a vinyl cover right there, right. So I actually cut that out right there, right, because otherwise there you see blurriness. But then I didn't cut so much right there, right. I did use it right there, right, for two reasons. One is if you remove that vinyl cover right there, then the OLED right itself right there will actually pop out right there, right. So you do need something to do that. But also what I did is I went ahead and I put the magnets underneath here right there, right, so that the magnets are the things that are holding here right there, right. Okay, so so then the other strange thing that I did, which I just ruined right now right there, right. Okay, is I went ahead and I yeah, this is going to make this thing more difficult right there, right. Okay, but let me take this apart very quickly right there, right. Okay, I actually put the magnets together right there, right, in a T fashion. So the magnet that's actually underneath here right there, right, underneath the vinyl part right there, right. Okay, and the magnet that's above the glass right there, right. Okay, that's how they're put together right there, right. Okay, and that's so that I can go ahead and put I can put the little piece of rubber around here right there, right, to be able to hold the optics in place right there, right. Okay. Okay, so anyway, you do have to choose the right side right there of the magnets right there. Of course, that goes without saying right there, right, that you do have to choose the right side for all of this right there, right. Okay, but now that I've actually got all my magnets snapped together right there, right, let me go ahead and show you a weight for this. So let me turn on my little balance right here, right, and then let me try to get everything on here right there, right. Okay, so let me let's see here. Let me zero this. Okay, so I'm trying to zero the balance here right there, right? Okay, oh, remember, it's this top part right here, right? It's supposed to be, oh no, it's not that. It's actually this right here, right? It's been a while since I've used this right there, right? So there's also a button here at the top right there, right? So I'll go ahead and I'll press that right there, right? So to try to get to zero right there, right? So then let me go ahead and put this on top of here right there, right? Let me put the magnets. Okay, it would have been nicer to have all that separate right there, right? Then I'll go ahead and put the optics over here right there, right? And then when I have everything together right there, right? Then basically I'm down to less than 10 grams right there for this whole setup right there, right? Okay, so it's the lightest, it's the smallest right there, right? But of course, the resolution is very low right there, right? Okay. So let me reconnect this right there, right, and show you to power right here, right? Now, there are many different ways you can power this thing right here, right? So for instance, I was using to a connection that was connecting to I guess they call it an OTG cable to a phone right there, right? Okay. But it could just be a battery pack right there, right? Which would make this thing last a long time right there, because this little device right there does not use very much power. The OLED, of course, is famous for not using very much power. But let me connect this right here, right? Okay. And then again, without the optics right there, right? Okay, but let me put the optics on here right there, right? Then with the optics on here right there, right? You do have to have some kind of spacing on here right there, right? You can't have that everything smushed together right there, right? Because remember, normally it would be what? It would have the glasses right there, right? Between the two right there, right? Okay. So let's see. So now we're gonna have to judge that right there, right? Okay. So there's a focus right there, right? Okay. So we're struggling right now because the thing isn't put together right there, right? Okay. Then let me stop and start again. And then again, we're going to the the demo right there, right? And then we'll start the demo again right there, right? So you can see that, okay? Okay, now of course, without the optics on there right there, right? Then I can't get this thing as close right there, right, to focus right there, right? Okay. So you really do need that optics on there, but you can see that that's what it looks like right there, right? Okay, but of course, the optics will allow everything to get much, much closer right there, right? Okay, so now let's go over the optics of this thing right there, right? In reality, this is just a squashed down version of what I showed you before right there, right? Using soda cap bottles right there, right? But of course, since I wanted to use this OLED display right there, right? Then I didn't want the optics at least to be as wide and like there. So remember the thing that we're doing here is that this is not augmented right there, right? Reality right there, right? So we don't want, we're trying to actually open up the peripheral vision right there, right? So that basically whenever you need to use the device right there, right? Or get data right there, you can just go ahead and look down on here, right? Okay. And now here I'm just being lazy and I'm just using, the variations of the code that I showed you before right there, right? Okay. But of course, this could be used very nicely right there. For instance, the devices that are, I would classify as HUDs right there, right? Which, are just displays right there, right? That display information right there, right? So for instance, you have HUDs in your car right there that display different information right there, right? Like, they could display a map or directions or which way you're going or distance or something like that. Same things I'm seeing glasses now that people are, of course, displaying, text using along with AI right there, in other words, they hear something and they respond to your query right there, and they'll show you in the device right there, right? Okay. Or for bicycles right there, riding around for bicycles right there, right? So many things right there, right? Of course, I saw the price of those things, and that's where I got the idea. Well, can't we just make this smaller right there, right? Of course, the resolution, it's not going to be in color right there, but those devices are not in color right there either, right there, right? Okay. And then of course, then everything will be smaller. Okay. Now, so this right here, I got from a, let me take this thing all apart right there, right? Okay. So we'll take this apart right there, right? And let's see here. Let me get all the little pieces out right here, right? Okay. So, like before right there, I showed you right there, right, that there were these two little lenses that were in the peepholes, for the front door right there, right? So I'm just using those two things on there, right? And then it turns out that in that device, or those peepholes right there, right, it came actually with two of these. These are some concave lenses right there, right? And the purpose of this thing is actually to allow you to actually to see a higher field of view right there, right? Okay. So for instance, in this case right here, right, if I'm looking at this, at this right here, right? Oops. Right there, right? Okay. Let me see it. Hopefully you can see again right there, right, that this concave lens right there, right, actually shrinks down. It actually shrinks down the display right there so that you actually see a higher peripheral right there, or a wider field of view right there, right? Okay, so that's the purpose of that right there, right? Okay. And then this right there, right, there's just a little piece of rubber right there that I found. And, well, where did I get it from? Well, that actually was the grip of some gel pens that I have right there, right? Okay. So good luck finding this right there, right? But there's these grips right there I have a standard pen right there, right? Okay. I was just lucky that I had that, and I was saying, what do I have that's about 1 centimeter wide right there, right? And I said, well, I've got these little grips right there, right? So I got the grip right there, right? The grip itself right there, in my case right there, is about twice as long as what I needed right there, right? Okay. And so because this whole thing is approximately what is more than 1 centimeter right there, right? But in reality, when you put everything in there right there, right, when you try this for yourself right there, right, okay, the glass part, or the two lenses right there, the two convex lenses right there, right, they'll go here at the top right here, right? They go up here at the top right there, and then the concave lens right there goes here at the bottom right at the edge right there, right? Okay, in other words, it'll fit down here right there, right? Okay. And so, of course, this will also allow you right there, right? Because, of course, I'm building this hole to my eye specification, which, again, you're wondering, well, why doesn't he just buy some augmented reality glasses or displays right there? There's lots of them. In fact, I saw one the other day, supposedly 129, although the reviewer did not really recommend them right there because they're actually not user friendly right there, right? Okay. And the answer is, one is the price right there, right? These things are actually relatively cheap right there, right? Let me see. The OLED display right there that I'm showing you right now is $4, and the little computer right there, right? In other words, that this OLED display right here, right there, is this one's $4 right there, right? And this little computer right here is $6 right there, right? Okay, and the OLED actually comes with one of these connectors right there, right? Forget what the name of the type of connector, but if you look all this up on the M5 Stack website right there, right, then you'll see everything there right there, right? Okay. Okay. So anyway, so there's the optics right there. What I've shown you right there for this little HUD right there, right? So that you can get information right there, right? Okay. Okay. Let me stop this right now, and or better yet, right there, right? Let me start this here at the top right there. I'm going to go very quickly right here through this. Again, mostly this is for my documentation right there, right? So in the future, I can remember what I did this right there, right? Okay, and let me get this thing showing here. I have a lot of glare right there, right? So let me turn off the lights here, right there, right? So that you can see the screen right there. Hopefully, we won't have the problem that we've had before. But here we are in the Arduino IDE right there, right? Okay, and of course, the device right there, right, is the M5 Nano C6, right there, right. So none of this is new. What is new right here, right there, is that you have to call up the what do you call it? The U8G2 library, and of course this is a connected right there, right. So you have to use a wire right there, right. Okay, a wire library also right there, right. Of course, since it's connected, using those four pins or four wires right there, right. One of them is power and one of them is ground. Then you have to just what do you call it? Specify the communication ports right there, right. So you're doing that. Okay, all of this is from before right there, right. This is actually calling up the specification for the UG2 library right there, right. Okay. And then in this case right there, right, let me see if I can get this right there, right. Still showing glare right there, right. Okay. Let me get this out a little bit right there, right. Okay. Make sure you call up the library for 72 by 40 pixels right there, right. Okay. Of course, if you look up all this stuff right there, right, you can learn all this stuff by itself right there, right. From the library for the OLED display right there, right. Okay. Brightness 50 right there, right. And again, I think I've actually set this thing up so that it can have like a brightness of 10, and I can still, because in this case I call it brightness, but in reality you're going to see that it's actually, you call up something called contrast right there, right. Okay. but I can actually see this OLED right there outside, of course, with a cap, because from the side right there, a lot of light can leak in right there, okay? Okay, so here we're beginning the Nano C6 right there, right? And then we're specifying where the wire or the wires are connected, what ports right there, right? And we're beginning now the U8G2 library right there. We clear a buffer. See, so that's, we don't set brightness, we set contrast right there, right? So these values will go from 0 to 100. And, well, I forgot to show you that right there, right? Okay, so what I did right there, right, is there is a little switch right here. You see the little switch right there, right? Okay. So all I did is I set it 2 ways right there, right? Let me see if I can get this thing to focus right there, right? Okay. And basically, by pressing on that button right there, right, I can actually change the brightness right there, right? So that's the lowest brightness right there, right? And then I can go in increments of 10% right there, right? And of course, then it goes down again right there, right? Okay. But the other thing that I did too is there's also a hold function right there, right? Okay. So if you hold on to that thing, if it works right there, right, then basically it actually will look for it will look for the Wi-Fi connection right there, right? And I did that because to be able to switch to between what do you call it, to be able to switch between what do you call it, between the phone and also the home network. Now I have to tell you the truth right here, right? Okay, is that let me go over here to the libraries right there, right? Okay. And I'm going to look here for, I should have prepared this ahead of time right there, right? I'm going to look for the M5 stack library part right here, right? No, actually, it's the ESP32 library right there, right? So let me do ESP 32 right there, right? Okay. Okay, so I guess we'll have to look down over here, and or maybe it was actually so I had a problem right here, right? Okay, so maybe it is the library right there, right? Okay, I had a problem right there, right? And it's actually with the main library right there, right? Okay. So what I had to do right there, right, is actually I can't find it right now, right? As I actually had to go down one library because with this device right there, right? Okay, with this device right there, right? Then basically I was not able to connect to Wi-Fi networks right there for some reason right there, right? Okay. But the other way, the great thing, what I was looking for right here, right, is this actually has Wi-Fi 6 right there, right? Okay. So I just want to warn you right there, if you have a problem right there, you might have to actually go to a lower library right there, right? Because for a while there, that's the only way I could actually get this thing to work right there, right? But hopefully somebody, they've corrected the library already right there, right? Okay. But anyway, just just to that just reminding me right there that there was a problem there right there with at least the library and the things that I was programming right there. Okay. So here I'm beginning. Okay. Now this also right there, you have to decide right there. In my case right there, I decided to use this the 5 font or 5 pixel font right there, right? Okay. And you're wondering what that looks like right there. Well, that's what the main screen will be on there right there, right? And again, now I've destroyed the optics, so you can't even see that anymore right there. Okay, so I'll tell you the truth right there, right? What I'm actually excited, and if enough people watch this right there, I might post it right there, right? But I'm working on actually sort of like an ebook reader right there, right? Okay, and as my HUD device right there, right, where I actually would like to be walking around outside right there, right, and actually reading. But of course, I don't want to trip right there, so I don't want to mess up my peripheral vision. So that's why I think that, this would be really nice right there for that right there, right? Okay, because now I'm using this with power with a cord right here, right? Okay, and that's because all those other M5 stack devices right there, right? Okay. They will actually, not last as long right there as if I connected this to a battery or to a phone. Or even, for instance, I was even using this right there. This is actually just what is it? 1,000 milliamp hour right there, right? Battery right there, right? Okay. But that's 4 times larger than any of the M5 stack devices right there, right? Okay. So anyway, so I was using that for this right there, right? Okay. Um, but that's just, my idea right there, right? Okay. That I can actually make something like an ebook reader right there. So maybe if enough people watch this video right there, right then I'll post that right there, right? Okay. But at this time, I don't have it written, but I have all the components, and actually it can be easily done right there, right? So anyway, so that's why I've been working on looking at the font right there, and I think that's a fine font right there, right, to be able to work with this right there, right? Okay. Of course, then I set up the Wi-Fi right there, right? And all this other stuff is basically the same kind of stuff that we've done before right there, right? So um, so here are the two things to use up there. Here's the update right there, right? This So the computer right there, the Nano C6 right there, you'll have to call that one up right there, right? Make sure you get this one because there's another thing that looks very close to this Nano C6 thing, but that one doesn't have Wi-Fi, so make sure you get the right one right there, right? So this is the one, of increasing the brightness. Of course, it's using the set contrast function right there, right? Okay. And then, of course, if you use the button A, because there's only one button right there, right? Okay. If you use the button A right there, function right there, and hold it right there, then that's actually where you get the network switcher right there, right? Okay. Okay, so all this stuff right there, right? There's nothing new here. Okay. And let's see here. So here's the function for actually writing on the screen right there, right? Okay, so again, we read our message, in using the WebSocket right there. We're reading this in right there, right? Okay, and everything's going to be sent in one swoop right there, right? Okay, so that's why I have the start and the finish defined inside the loop or inside this function and not outside of it, like I've done before. And here's the message length right there, right? I clear the buffer that's going to be sending to the little device right there, right, to the OLED device. So when you look at this, just think, what? Oh, this is the OLED. So we clear the buffer of the OLED right there, right? We're going to be drawing pixel by pixel. But for that ebook reader that I'm telling you about right there, we'll be writing letter by letter and not pixel by pixel. Okay. But again, you have myself right there, right? Okay. So you come over here right there, right, and you read the second you read the second lowest or 7 lowest bits of a byte right there, right? Okay, so that's 7F right there, right? Okay, and that's actually telling you what the length right there, right? Okay, right there, right? But okay, if the top byte right there, right? Okay, if the top byte, okay, so let's write that out. What is it? 80 right there, right? That's the top byte of a bit right there, right? Is actually set right there, right? Okay. Then what you're going to do right there, right, is that then what you're going to do right there, right, is actually you're going to go ahead and draw right there, right? Okay. And so that's where you set the color to 1 right there. There's only 2 colors in the OLED right there. There's 1 and there's what? And then there's 0 right there, right? Okay. And so what this is telling you right there when we get to that part right there is that there's been a color change right there, right? Okay. So you're not going to do this right there. There's no color change right there, right? So, and another thing I forgot to tell you right there, right? If you look very carefully right there at the video for Bad Apple right there, right? It's actually a silhouette filled with white color for the figures right there. But what I'm really doing here is I'm actually, which I forgot to show you right there, right? Is I'm actually just drawing the edges right there, right? So so basically the function that I'm going to show you is actually just to look at the edges of thing right there, right? In other words, there's no colors here right there, right? Besides, so whenever I'm drawing something right there, turning on the OLED, That's the interface between one color and another right there, right? And that's it right there, right? Okay. And okay. And then, of course, the drop pixel right there, right? Why 72? Because remember, the OLED display is only 72 pixels wide. And so, by the Y right there is actually defined by dividing by 72 right there, right? Okay. Of course, all of this is done in integer right there, right? So that's why the Y is defined by what, just divide through by 72 right there, right? Okay. And then the leftover is actually the X coordinate right there, right? Okay. So that's why it's using modulus math right here to be able to figure out the position on there, right? Now, of course, when you've done this addition to finish right there, right, then the start becomes the finish right there, and then you consider the draw right there, right? Very similar to what we've done before right there, right? So that's why I'm going through so quickly. Of course, once you've written all the buffer right there, right, then you send it right there, right, to the OLED right there, right? And then of course, so basically I just dumbed this thing down right there from all the color displays I've been sending right there, right? So basically, again, we're reading, we're taking a reading of the whole display right there and squashing it down to a 72 by 80 display because that's the dimensions of the OLED right there, right? Okay. And then you come down over here right there, right? And of course, if you look at those different places right there, this is a very important variable right there, mask right there, right? In other words, that you can take the whole color, every color right there, right? Red, green, and blue right there, right? Are actually 8-bit colors right there, right? Okay. But what I decided to do is, it's really the top byte that matters right there, right? Or you could make it 2 bytes or 3 bytes or 4 bytes, whichever number of bytes you wanted, depending on how many colors you wanted to define right there, right? Okay. But in this case, I just used I used the mask of 80 right there, which is what the top byte right there, right? Okay. To specify the color spectrum, because of course, this display doesn't have 16 color or it doesn't have millions of colors right there, right? It only has 2 colors, black and white right there, right? Or in this case, it's black and white right there, right? Okay. Okay. So anyway, so we keep on calling back here right there, right? Nothing, I'm not showing you anything new yet, okay? Except for when we can't get down to here. Okay, so remember 72 by 40 right there, right? Everything's 72 by 40 now right there, right? Okay. Okay, and then now we're reading in the frames right there, the data from each frame right there, right? Okay. And then we come over here, and what I decided to do right there, right? Okay, is that I decided to call, what do you call it? On right there to be anything above the average brightness right there of the display right there, right? Okay. So that's why what I'm doing here is I'm going ahead and reading all the bytes right there, right? Okay. And then I'm reading I'm using that mask. So that's where that mask was important right there, right? I'm just using the top bit. That's all I'm doing. So this is really red, this is green, and this is blue right there, right? And then once I've done that right there, right, then I'm adding all that up to this value called average, because then the average gets divided by 2880, which is basically the number of pixels in my display right there, right? So that's where I get that right there, right? Okay. And then once I do that right there, right, the color, okay, is read by basically, so now we go ahead and read the individual color right there, right? So if it's greater than the average, then it actually will all of this will get set to be a value of 1. And if it's less than the average, then it'll be a value of 0 right there, right? So that's all I'm doing here right there, right? Okay. Now I do this at the beginning right there, right? Because basically I am going to go through, I'm going to go by pixel right there, right? But remember what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to define the edges right there, right, of the colors and not really fill in any color right there, right? Okay. And that's why, I was showing you this other video right there, right? at the beginning right there, right? The purpose of showing you that other video right there is to show you that you can actually, using the edge right there, you can actually see motion and even in color videos right there, right? Okay, not just that bad Apple video that I was showing you right there, right? Okay, so you come over here right there, right? And then what are you going to do right there, right? Okay, if it's a different color, so in other words, if it's brighter than the average color of your video, if there's, if it goes from being less than the average to greater than the average right there, right? Or if the steps are greater than 127. Why greater than 127? Because remember, well, okay, I'll show you that right there. Well, I already showed you that right there, right? 7F right there, right? What was 7F right there, right? 7F is that's 127 right there, right? Okay, so we can actually, walk through or basically do 127 steps right there, right? More than 127 steps right there, right? Then we can't do that right there, right? So it's if either one of those right there, right? Then we come over here right there, right? Now, if the colors are the same right there, right? Then it wasn't this that we're calling them this if statement right there. It's really we're telling them that now we're skipping right there to the next byte right there. Then we're sending another byte right there, right? Okay. But if this isn't true, then you do this right there. And so you're going to now go ahead and look at that stop, push the steps. Well, here you're pushing the steps right there, right? But down here, what you're doing is basically, it was this that happened right there, right? Okay. Okay, so anyway, study this right there, the logic right there, that's a challenge for you right there, right? Of the logic of this thing right there. It's been a while since I looked at this right there, right? But this is the logic that I came to right there, right? And of course, then the old color becomes the new color right there, right? The steps get reset right there, right? Because basically, we're sending now bytes of data at a time right there, right? Of course, then we increment the steps right there, right? And then eventually, at the end, we push all the steps through right there, right? Okay. And in this case, we didn't have to, like before right there, check whether we had less than a certain number of bytes right there, right? Because basically, in this case right there, right, we'll never exceed the number of bytes that we can send in our buffer right there, right? Okay, but everything is being set right there, right? And then here at the bottom right there, right, then we go ahead. And that's where the Wi-Fi stuff, but the Wi-Fi stuff is the same as before right there, right? Okay. Okay. So hopefully that's enough information so you can build your own little HUD display right there, right? Okay, this is the smallest one I have right there. It would be nice if this was color right there, right? Because then this would be then the tiniest color, or then would be the tiniest, what do you call it, VR right there, headset, like that. And of course, what's very nice is basically these two things are under $10 right there, right? And then the other thing too about this right there, right now, it wouldn't be stereo, but I forgot to let's see how long it takes me to find this for you right there, right? Okay. Let's see. I didn't prepare for this right there, right? But now that I'm seeing it right there, right, I'm seeing, well, this could actually be done. We can actually do this very nicely right there, right? Okay. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for another OLED. Because I tend to buy things in two right there, right? Okay. And then, okay, so here's another OLED display right there, right? And of course, now I'm going to connect it here. Here's the OLED display. Let me turn the lights on right there, right? Okay. Okay, so here's another OLED display. Here's a connector. Here's a longer one right there, right? I'm not sure you need a longer one. Okay, probably shouldn't connect this directly on here. And of course, this doesn't turn on right there. It's not going to turn on this stage right there, right? But go ahead and disconnect this thing. And of course, what you should be able to do, right, is, well, you can connect as many OLEDs as you want right there, right? Okay. And so this could be, it wouldn't be stereo right there, right? But your HUD could actually have Could have two displays, one for each eye right there, right? Okay. Or not right there, right? You could do that. But much less expensive right there, right? Okay, to do this. Okay. Oh, there is one last thing, because I don't want you to be disappointed. I was a little disappointed right there, right? This Nano C6 right there, right? For some reason, I tried to program it, and right away it said that there was a problem. And so the problem was, let me see if I can find the solution up here for you right here under Tools. The problem right here was flash. No, it wasn't flash size. The partition right here, right? Because as far as I know right there, this actually should work right there, right? It has 4 megabytes right there, right? And I think you look back to those M5 stick C modules we've worked before, I think, especially the orange ones right there, the original ones right there, right? They were they had that amount of memory right there, right? Okay. But when I first tried to compile this right there, it would not compile right there, right? So the solution to this right there is not to use this default one right here, right? Because this one includes actually, well, it's partitioned this way, but if you look at this right there, it's only what 2.7 megabytes right there, right? So what's going on here? Well, what's going on here right there is that they've actually included in this for this device right there, right? That this little device is going to be used, in some industrial application, and so it might be on some antenna, or or some device right there, and it's remote right there, and then nobody wants to go and connect this to a computer right there, right? So so they've actually included over the air. That's what the OTA right there, right? Okay. So what I did is actually, since this is the application memory, and this is the what do you call it? I guess it's treated like RAM right there, right? Okay. Then go ahead and change it to this right there, right? Still, it's what 2 megabytes for the application and 2 megabytes for the random access memory right there, right? Okay. Keep it that way right there. Did I try the 1 and the 3? I didn't. I just tried 2 and 2 right there, and everything seems to fit on there right there, right? Okay. For the things that I have in mind right there, I don't think this will be a problem right there, right? Okay. Because in this case right there, right, remember I'm using this as a web server right there, right? And I'm sorry I'm doing this in the dark right there, right? Okay, but using this as a web server right there, right? Okay, but of course, well, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself right there, right? Okay. So anyway, so there's a little HUD display right there, right? The smallest display there we've shown so far right there. Hopefully people will enjoy this right there. I really like this one right there, especially coming up with the optics right there for this whole thing.